So personality profiling, that's what we're going to be talking about. Why is it important? Well, we find out that it becomes valuable when you're selling real estate or really relating with other people to become versatile, which means being able to deal with different types of people in different ways in different situations. We're going to learn about the 4 personality types: the driver, the expressive, the analytical, and the amiable. We're going to learn what kind of personality types we each have, and we're going to learn again how to be more versatile, how to become more like other people so that we can sort of get across the moat into their world, build trust, build relationships, and be able to deal with people better. So hopefully they'll join us. What is this word? Let's see if that makes it happen. What is versatility? All right, so being able to adapt to different kinds of people in different ways in different situations. So in real estate, I mean, when you get a lead, do you know what kind of, I mean, are they all the same personality type, would you think? No, it's like a roll of the dice. You have no idea what you're going to be dealing with. So being able to deal with different people, you have to be able to adapt yourself so that you can become more like them. I think a lot of times, naturally, we want them to become more like us. And does that happen naturally? Is the client going to try to become more like you just because they want you to feel good? Probably not. So it's up to us to adapt to them. That's what being versatile. So here's what I wrote down, and this is a lot about our ego, the ability to put away being you. So the natural you, you need to put that away so you can be more like someone else. Does that make sense to you? So that's what versatility, and that's the whole point here. As we learn about the personality types, we have to learn who we are. We have to learn to identify who our clients or whoever we're dealing with, what personality type they are, and then we need to try to become more like them. Now, are you going to become just like them? Probably not. And if you try too hard, how is that going to come across? Fake. We don't want that. Can we adjust the versatility scale where we don't come off as fake, and yet we become more like them, maybe, and they welcome us into their world a little bit better? So Brian Buffini talks about, like, in working with people, like it's a castle with a moat around the. Can everybody understand that imagery? And so how do you cross the moat if you're welcomed into the castle? How would you normally, what would they do?
Drawbridge.
They lower the drawbridge. What is it? It's a drawbridge, whatever kind of bridge it is. It's got the chains, and they lower it down, and then you come on across. So that's what we're trying to do. We want people to lower their guard a little bit and let us in so we can help them. We're not trying, this is not about trying to swindle anybody in anything. We're just trying to break the ice, bond a little bit, get to know people, and just develop a little bit better rapport so that we can work with folks. Because are people naturally welcome to salespeople?
No.
I mean, you ever get a call and it's a salesman? Yes, a salesperson. Come on in. Let me put the drawbridge down. And in fact, you're getting the hot oil and you're ready to pour it on their heads. You know, you're shooting flaming arrows at them. You're trying to do anything you can to keep them out. We don't want that. We want to be welcomed in. So that's what we're doing. Versatility. Remember that word. All right, so what we're going to do now, we're going to pass out this test. Benjamin's going to pass this out. No one told you that there was going to be a test. This is going to be the easiest test you've ever taken. And so let me ask you a question as far as personality. Is it more, what is reality? What you think you are, or what other people think you are? So who thinks it's what you are? What you think you are?
Reality is what you think you are.
Okay, and who thinks it's the opposite? Who thinks it's what other people think you are? I mean, you can make an argument for both. In this case, we're going to go with what other people think you are, because that's how you're being perceived. And I think a lot of us feel like, especially as we discover the personality types, you may want to be one or the other, yet it doesn't matter what you want to be. You are what you are, and what people think you are is how you're being perceived, so that's really the reality. So this test, we're taking it ourselves. So we're going to determine what we think we are. And you're probably going to be biased for some of the answers for whatever reason. The best way to do this is to take this test and give it to 10 people that you know, and have them fill it out, and then you really find out who you are. And for some people, that could be shocking, because it may be totally different than what you think. How valuable, though, would that be? So when I first learned about this, when I was working for a guy named Mike Ferry, we went out to California, and we sat down with a guy named Ron Arden. And Ron Arden is like a speech coach, and he does a lot of stuff. He's worked with a lot of famous people, and we went through this stuff, and we had to get 10 people to do this before we got out to California and mail it in. And so, it was probably about 50% of the people in the room were not what they thought they were. So that should tell you this. So just because you're filling this out and it's going to turn out one way, it may not be accurate. So let's go through this real quickly together. All right, so what you're going to do on the first thing, you're thinking how other people would describe you, okay? And so if they describe you as cooperative, if you're highly cooperative, you're going to be an A or B, and if you're not very cooperative, you'd be a C or D. Got it? So the most is going to be on the left, an A or a B, and the least is going to be a C or a D. So if they see you as cooperative, check whatever it is. Just put an X in that box. Figure we have a question? Yes, Mike.
Is this the first time they meet us or over a lifetime? Two separate
As we
ages.
learn about the personality types, it's interesting that question would come from Mike, because that would be somewhat of a more analytical question, which Mike does not have. I didn't think he had an analytical bone in his body. However, Mike, to answer your question, let's go ahead and make this as they know you a little bit, not the first time.
Got it.
Okay? Thanks for the question. All right, the next one. Do they see you as thorough? We're going to have to do this fast. The next one, do they see you as someone who avoids taking risks? Just put it anywhere on there. And again, there's no right or wrong answers here. Do they see you as somebody who likes to go with the flow? Are you a go-along kind of person? All right, and then lastly, are you a good listener? If you're a great listener, you'd be an A. If you're not a very good listener, you'd be a B. All right?
Yes.
Now, the next one, it swaps. The A's are the least, and the D's are the most. Everybody get that? It's a little tricky here. So if you're not very competitive, if people don't see you as very competitive, you would check A. Make an X and A. If you're very competitive, D. If you're someone who fast acting, make quick decisions, then you would be a D, and if you're not, then you'd be an A. The next is takes risks. The next one is taking charge of the situation, or you let somebody, when something's going on, you just jump in and take charge, or do you not, or maybe somewhere in the middle. And the last is directive. So that's sort of like taking charge, very similar. Okay, now here's the math portion. We told Harry there would be no math, but there is a little bit of math. So you have to add up how many A's you have. So if you have 4 X's in the 2A columns, that would be 4. And then B, and then C, and then D. Any questions about that? This is very difficult for a group of real estate agents.
Thanks.
All right. So here comes the real tricky math, Harry. And I know you went over this in Australia in grade school.
It's like 12th grade.
12th grade. And they probably didn't have this at JMU. This is multiplication table. So somebody help me. Okay, so then what you're going to do is your A column, just write out whatever that total is. Since you're multiplying by 1, it's the same thing. That's a little secret math trick. All right, B, your total of B's, you're going to multiply those by 2. So if you had 2 B's, then you'd have 4. C's, multiplying by 3, and D's, you're multiplying by 4. All right? So then you're going to add all those up and make a grand total at the bottom. How are we doing so far? Stokes? Get checked. That row right there, that's sort of like Einstein's row right there. We got.
He's trying to get my questions.
Yeah, he went to Bridgewater, so it's just natural. Right? Okay. So you got that. Does anybody have 25? Okay. That means you're perfect. No. Sort of in the middle. So then, now, anybody remember graphing? So this is what you thought this was a class of personality profiling. Actually, it's a math review. The RAR decided we need a little bit of help with math. So place whatever you have, whatever your total is, just make a little dot on that horizontal graph. So if you're 25, you're right in the middle. If you're 40, you're all the way to the right. Everybody got that?
And if you below,
Remember,
you
halfway
fail.
through the test. Turn the page. All right, now A is going to be the most, B is going to be the least. If people see you as undisciplined, check A. If you're very disciplined, then you'd be on the other side. The next one is emotional. So for instance, if you've cried twice so far during the class, I would probably be in A. Right? If you're relationship oriented, if you're like Sarah and you can't stop talking to Abby the whole time, you would check A. Right? If you're informal, again, very informal is A. If you wore a tuxedo to the class, then you'd be D. Friendly would be next one. And then very open would be the last. Isn't this fun?
Yeah.
Andrew, why do you have to sit in the very back corner? Did you get punished or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
They told me I had to be back.
All right. So next, remember, the next one, it swaps. The least, A is the least, D is the most. So the first is self-controlled. Next would be rational, task-oriented, formal, businesslike, and finally, independent. So if you're very dependent, you would be a D, and if you're very dependent, you would be an A. If you're very independent, you would be a D. All right, just like last time, we're adding them up. So add them all up. Need help with your addition? I'm sure somebody around you can help you. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're multiplying those columns. So all your A's multiply by 1, gives you the same number. B's multiply by 2, and so on. Then you're going to add them all up. All right, so here we go. Now we've done, so far we've done graphing, we've done addition, we've done multiplication, now we have division. So once you have your grand total, divide your score by 12. We're going to lose a few of you here. Scholar. So from here on out, Scholar, just play along where Abby can help you. Either way. Does anybody need help with this part? So if you're advanced and you've already finished this, then you want to graph your score on the the vertical graph. If you're a 3 or wherever you are, just put a dot there. Do we have that? You're advanced, obviously. We have some people. Scholar, you still on the first page, or are we on?
We are.
Okay. Okay, good for you. Okay, so now turn the page if you're done. Turn the page. So what we're going to do is we're going to work on this bottom graph here. This is really advanced. So wherever use your finger, not your pen or pencil first, and put wherever your score is on the horizontal graph. That's the one that goes this way. Put your finger on that number, and then go up to where, or down to where you're on the vertical graph. That's the one that goes this way. And then you want to make a dot. So if you were, if you're like a 3.5 on the vertical and a 35, then you'd be up here in bear territory. If you're a 1.75 and a 15, you'd be in the koala territory. Everybody getting it? If you're not, it's okay. Or it's okay. It's okay. All right, is everybody good so far? Everybody good so far? Is everybody good so far?
Yeah.
All right, good. All right. That's always the hardest part. All right, so what we got so far? We've taken the test, we learned about being versatile. Now let's sort of learn about the different personality types. Now you see on your paper, you've got some animals. And some of you are better at remembering things if you use a visible icon. So you can use the bear, the owl, the parrot, and the koala. So let's talk about that. So what is a bear? When you think about a bear, what are some of the traits of a bear? A bear. Big.
Scary.
Sometimes scary, right.
Lovable.
Okay. So let me tell you, because we're sort of getting, so bear, bears sort of, when it comes to like animals around the world, I mean, bears are pretty much in control, would you say? Yeah, I mean, it's not a whole lot gonna mess with the bear, right? What about the owl? When you think of owl, think about Winnie the Pooh. What was Owl doing in Winnie the Pooh? Those of you who know me know I love Winnie the Pooh. I use Winnie the Pooh analogies all the time. What,
Ever vigilant?
the owl. Wise.
Overseeing, I feel like.
Yeah, overseeing, and so very, very much of a processor of, yeah, here we're coming to that, yeah. Right, the koala, Harry, we actually have someone from Koala Land. Tell us about koalas. Brought in a guy from Australia just for this.
Pretty cuddly, lazy, nice.
They're cuddly and wonderful and lovable, and love is all about them. I've never met a koala bear, but that's what we're going with.
Those are not bad.
And then what about the parrot? What are parrots?
Loud.
They can be loud, scattered, and they're sometimes colorful and vibrant and
Good at repeating.
what's that?
Good at repeating.
Good at repeating, maybe. Anyway, so if these make sense to you, remember these. If they don't, then you can remember these. So these are the technical terms. We have amiable. Which one would you think is amiable on these animals? Koala. Very good. How about the driver? The bear. How about expressive? That's right. And lastly, the analytical would be Mr. Owl. Very good. Could be Mrs. Owl, I guess. So let's talk about amiable first, okay? So how many of you scored in the koala category? Raise your hands. Raise your hands. Okay. What's that?
I'm on the.
Yeah, you're on the line because you were right in the middle on that. So that's okay. And again, when you look at this, is everybody going to fall exactly into one of these categories? Probably not. This is not an exact science. Some people will exhibit traits from others, but again, nobody in here probably had an SAT score higher than 1,000 anyway, so we got to dumb it down a little bit to get it straight. Certainly I didn't. So if I'm teaching it, we can't make it but two challenging here. Good work. So what we're going to do is just make some generalizations about this. I guarantee you this will help you as we go through this. Okay, so amiable. Amiable is all about relationships, and mostly about how, so if you're the agent, it's not about how the client feels as much as about how they feel that you feel, right? Amiable people want you to feel good. So think about it. You ever been on an appointment where you go into somebody's house and they offer you iced tea, and they don't want to sit at the kitchen table. They want to sit like in the family room and like, oh, you take my chair, right? Those are some things that would tip you off that you're dealing with amiable. So the personal relationship between you and that person matters to them, right? For those of you that are amiable, does this resonate with you? Okay. Things like family, very important. And I would even say like team, partnership, together, that is important. Trust, and I would even maybe put / likability, and then sincerity. That's all very important to amiable people. So when you go into an amiable, how do you know that they're amiable? Right? What are some things that could tip you off? Forget this stuff for just a second, but what are some things that would tip you off about amiable? I mentioned about the iced tea and the comfortable chair. What else in our business might tip you off that somebody's amiable?
Non-confrontational.
Yeah, non-confrontational is another thing with amiable. I'm not going to write that down. What else?
I want to hug you.
Huggers.
Yeah, a hugger. I mean, that would be a good. Usually, some people that if they're hugging, you can probably tell maybe they're not amiable, but some of the things they're not. They're probably not. Some of the other ones. We'll talk about that. So I wrote down plants, like amiable people. Like plants and animals and pictures. What are the pictures in their home of?
Relationship.
Friends or family.
Yeah, relationship-based, stuff like that. And how is the house or the office, what's the decor?
Warm.
Warm and comfortable. Plenty of seating, maybe too much seating, right? Because it's all about making people comfortable, making people feel good, right? And so if you, think about this, if you like read that and you're like, that's the dumbest thing, why would you ever do that in your house? Well then guess what, when you go talk to the times when you didn't get the listing appointment, ding, 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 that's probably the amiable person who hates your guts because you're just not related to them, get it? Of course, y'all are perfect, so it never happens to you. It certainly happened to me. If you don't do it right, it can happen. So there you go. So that's the atmosphere. Now there are other things, and there's certain exceptions all the time that can happen. So one of the things you want to do when you're with an amiable, you want to leave time for bonding. What does that mean?
Schedule long appointments, time block that.
Yes. And so what's going to happen when you get there? You set up, right down, sit right at the kitchen table, whip the briefcase out, get down to business? Why not? I mean, let's get it done. I'm in a hurry, right? I'm a busy man. Let's do it.
You're gonna be talking about what they did over the weekend with their friends, what you did, things are coming up. It's gonna be more conversational, relational.
Why?
That's what they need.
That's what their thing. That's their thing. That's their thing. What if that doesn't feel good to you? Become more versatile. Get it? Okay. So you're gonna try to leave that kind of time. Are they gonna talk more about themselves? What do you need to be prepared to talk about?
Probably you.
A lot of times they want to get to know you. They want to make sure you're okay and you're comfortable, and hear some stories about you. So don't be afraid to open up a little bit to these folks, but leave time, because if you rush through this, what happens? What happens to the drawbridge?
Goes up.
It's coming up. Here comes the hot oil and the flaming arrows. All right? Create an atmosphere of working together. What does that mean?
Me instead of you.
I think, we're working together. I think people that are amiable like to be led, but maybe while holding a hand, if you can get that analogy. It's not being ordered or commanded. It's working together as a team. So some things you don't want to do. You don't want to close hard on somebody who's amiable. What happens if you do that? For those of you who are amiable, do you like when people try to close you? No, you don't. What do you need to do before you're ready to make a decision? What is a big step that needs to be? Trust. I didn't write that up there, but that's it. Trust when you're talking about amiable. And that trust comes a lot of time from this and this. All right, so here's another one. So have you ever been to the listing appointment or any kind of appointment? You're like, I made brownies for you. Would you like a brownie? If you don't eat the brownie, what do you tell them?
I'd love one.
Rodney's never turned down a brownie in his life. He's passing judgment on the brownies. He is a picky eater, right? So even if you don't like the brownies, what should you do? In the perfect world, you eat the brownie, right? If they say, well, after the appointment, could you stay for lunch? Well, I mean, at some point you got to draw the line, right? You're not going to spend the night. Some people are, but, I tell you, one of the funny things I used to say, and one of people are like, well, we want to sleep on it. I would be like, well, that's great. Where do you want me to sleep? You can sometimes use humor in these things. But, if somebody offers you something, now again, you don't need a large pizza and, whatever else. You want to understand that what they're doing is by offering you something, they're trying to bring you in. And if you don't accept that, that could be perceived as a signal that maybe you don't want it or they shouldn't let you. Do you get that? Okay. All right, so that's some of the amiable. I have a couple other little things here that I wrote down that I was at lunchtime. I made a couple. So other things with amiable: loyalty is big, caring, easygoing. Let's see here. Don't be in a hurry. Don't create conflict, disagreement. You don't want that. There may be some things that you're not totally in line with. You want to work through that versus just say, hey, You say it's worth $2.99, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. We're not doing that. We're going $3.99. Well, you don't want to create conflict in prices sometimes where you get conflict, whatever else. You just want to back off and sort of work with that, ask them how it feels and what do they think, and then try to slowly work through it. And rather than close, you want to lead them to the decision. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's amiable. Any questions about amiable? All right, analytical. How many of you were analytical? Raise your hands high, analytical folks. Abby, raise your hand. Don't be afraid of that. Be proud of being analytical. So for those of you that are analytical, what is your number one thing that you base everything on? Yeah, the good term is data. Data. So that's facts, numbers, that's all the stuff. So you're data driven. Okay? Analytical people are very cautious. They're not gonna leap before they look. Okay, why? Why would they not do that?
Don't know what's down there.
You gotta have the data to support it. We're not taking chances. The data has gotta be there, and once it lines up, then it's easy to make that decision, right? Okay? So they're cautious and logical. Everything has to line up and make sense in order to move. So a plan is important for somebody who's analytical. So if you had a seller and you gave them a timeline and you gave them, some things that you know are going to get accomplished, they can check off. Does that appeal to the analytical in many cases? It certainly does. So the decision's obviously based on critical thinking and not being a risk taker. There's no need to take a risk if everything's based on the data. Does that make sense to you? Okay, so what kind of people, what are some giveaways that you know that you've got an analytical person?
Notepad.
A lot of notes, right? Books, very good, very good. What else? Organization is interesting, and Todd, you remember when we went and saw, we were working on Stepania's land, and we went over and saw the attorney, what's that guy's name?
That wasn't the attorney, it was the accountant.
The accountant, right, the accountant. So of all, almost without fail, if you've got an accountant, what's the personality type? And it's hard to be an expressive accountant. Okay. All right, that guy's name was Dolan. So we go to Dolan's office. Describe Dolan's office.
You couldn't get through it. It looked like a porter's room.
And what was blocking us?
Files like stacked.
Files everywhere.
Yeah.
It looked chaotic to me.
Yeah.
Yet we asked him, he's like, well, let me get the Smith file. What do you do?
He went right to it.
Right to it.
Yeah.
Out of 17,000 files, he knew exactly where it was. So we're going to learn a little bit about chaos with another personality type. Understand this is maybe organized chaos, different situation. Okay, and because if you're analytical and you're data driven, if you've got a lot of data, that can take up a lot of space. You get it? So every project you're working on, you don't just have one little sheet of paper or you're not thinking how it feels. You got to have some stuff to support whatever you're doing. So there may be a lot of stuff around. Let's look at some other stuff that analytical folks would, in the atmosphere. So organized chaos. So what about decor? There's going to be a lot of pictures and paintings and ferns and black light posters and neon beer signs. Is that going to be part of it? Why? Where are my analyticals again? So do you have all that stuff? Why do you not care about that?
Doesn't matter.
It's not relevant. It's not relevant. Because you're focused on the data. You're focused on the information. You don't need some sign that says, whatever, like success. Reading it every day. Duh. Okay. And then, so we could add files to this, so books, newspapers, and journal. Okay? Files as well. What else might you see for those of you that are analytical? What would tell us that you're definitely analytical that's not up here? Or is that enough? It's okay. Mike, you're about analytical.
The little things that they read their books on.
Like a Kindle?
Yeah. The people are always reading on the little things.
Depends on what you're reading. If you're reading like the Journal of Accounting, you know, that's one thing. But if you're reading, you know, like some kind of, you know, like summer sex
Not
thriller or beach
Palomino.
book, that may not be analytical. But yeah, so you know, like computer, like in the old days, you know, like when before like the computer, you know, had all sorts of different kind of adding machines and whatever. Like my dad, he was analytical. What was in his pocket?
Pocket protector.
He did have a pocket protector. What was in the pocket protector?
Pen.
Lots of pencils and erasers, because if you're doing numbers, sometimes you have to erase that. What else is in there? Before the calculator, what do people use?
It's like a slide rule.
Slide rule. Slide rule. My father could never understand how I couldn't use the slide rule. So frustrated. I was a total loser because I could not figure out how to do that. So, I don't know. Anybody here know how to use a slide rule? Crazy. So anyway, everybody getting the picture of what we're talking about with analytical.
Can we go back to what's a slide rule?
Look it up on the internet. Okay, so here's some things, do's and don'ts with our analytical friends. You guys that are analytical, you tell me if we're wrong, let's talk about it. So be on time. Why is being on time important?
Respect.
I think being on time is good anytime, but especially with analytical. Why? And a lot of times they're on a strict schedule, right? What about bonding? You want to do a lot of bonding?
No.
Let me tell you, analytical buddy, I just love sunsets. Don't you? Do you have any lasagna? Yeah, it just doesn't compute. And as extreme as some of these examples are, you can see, like if you go down that path incorrectly, it doesn't matter what you bring later. You're done. You're done. So, do you want to close hard on the analytical? Maybe a little harder than, I mean, if the data lines it all up, maybe still not as hard as certainly less, the analytical would be the second, try to get my thoughts together. Amiable, number one. You want to be as loose on the close with the amiable, probably analytical, maybe second. You need to give them a chance to look through all the information. Okay? How many comps do you bring to the analytical? Make sure you don't forget anything. I mean, you bring like a wagon full of stuff, right? Because it's important. If it's relevant, they want to see it. They definitely want to see it. Okay. Don't be disorganized. Again, remember Dolan's office. You looked a little disorganized, but knew exactly where everything was. You want to be the same way. You want to make sure you can put your fingers on everything you need as far as the data. Your opinion. Here's what I think. Is that a great phrase for somebody who's analytical? Why? What you think doesn't matter. How about even worse? Here's what I'm feeling. That means 911. Get out of here. So having deadlines is okay. You just got to make sure that everything's been processed before you put that. So a timeline is okay. Deadlines can be okay. You just don't want to push that, especially as it relates to, you know, we don't need to look at this stuff, man. I mean, it's good, isn't it? You feeling it? You loving this? That's not working with these folks. All right, anything to add here for analytical? Everybody getting the picture here? Okay. Next, the driver. What was our animal imagery for the driver? Bird. So, how many drivers do we have in the crowd? Everybody wants to be a driver. That's the one, that's the cool one, right? Because you're in charge. So what is the typical, here's something to think about with drivers. A lot of people think just because people are in a leadership role, they're drivers. So you have to be careful of the job, because people can have aspects of their job that are driver characteristics. That's not really who they are. So be careful if somebody's a president of a company. It doesn't necessarily mean they're a driver. They have to act like a driver at work sometimes. So a driver versus an analytical, a driver wants to see, like I wrote, just the facts, ma'am. So they want like bullet points. I don't need to see all the data. I need to see 1, 2, or 3 things just so that I can get on board. So all these people, like, anybody know what Cliff's Notes are? Driver loves Cliff's Notes. Why?
To the point.
I love Cliff's Notes too. I'm not a
Get the
driver.
information you need to move on.
Exactly right. I mean, all the relevant stuff is in the yellow and black book. The rest of it's a bunch of BS. I don't have time for that. Right? So that's a very, I mean, that's super essential to understand when you're talking about drivers. So direct and to the point. Does that mean they don't have a personality?
No.
It doesn't. But when we get down to business, they don't want a lot of BS. It's let's get this done and let's focus on the task at hand. Bottom line, people, results oriented. Basically, tell me what you're going to do, tell me how long it's going to take, tell me what it's going to cost, and let's get it done. Okay? They're action oriented. Not a lot, well, we'll just sort of see what happens, and maybe it'll go okay, and we'll hope it'll do okay. That's not good for the driver. They want to see people taking action to get things done. And they like to take charge. Once they know what they're going to do, things are going to move. All right, what results now? Confident, they usually come across as very confident, and they're not afraid to confront you. If they feel like, if they disagree, they're not afraid to confront you, and you don't need to worry about that. It's okay, as long as you can justify your position and be polite about it, it shouldn't be a problem here. So confrontation can be okay, and don't be afraid to disagree respectfully with someone who is a driver. For those of you who are drivers, what else, does that describe you pretty well? Very good. Very good. So the bear, don't think the bear is mean. They're not necessarily mean. They're just folks that are they want things done. They want basically you to, as you see here, we'll get to that. Let's go to the next one. So here's atmosphere. Now this is a tough one because it's not always the case, but in general, would the driver have the ferns and the plants and all that kind of stuff? What does their home look like? I mean, a lot of times like a hotel, I don't know, like the furniture stores and stuff like that, but how about colors?
Neutral.
Yeah, sort of like you'd see at a I don't know about a fancy hotel because I've really never stayed at a lot of fancy hotels. But it's going to be more Spartan, things that are necessary, maybe a little bit beyond necessary. Yet is it going to seem to be? Is it more stylish or more comfortable? More efficient. Efficient.
No throw pillows on the bed.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't think you have like our bed at home's got like a stack of like 19 pillows you can sleep off of. That would not be. That's an amiable. Okay, so organized and purposeful. Everything's going to have its purpose. Everything's going to have its place. What about this is a dead giveaway. What about the desk of a driver? It's going to be clean. Whatever they're working on at that moment is right there. Everything else is gone. Is that the case?
Yes.
Sometimes
Maybe.
it's
Not
not,
for this
because I
one.
have a whole bunch I'm working on all at once.
Okay.
So,
And so what we'll see is you can have traits. The axis on the graph, you can exhibit traits. We'll see that in just a minute. So, but that, in most cases, when somebody, because if they're directed to the point, we're going to get this done and then we're moving on. We don't usually have lots of things going on at the same time. There are exceptions. And then as far as the dress, who's going to be the most casually dressed in most cases in this situation? Animal. And then this could be the most dressed up kind of person, put together nicely. All right, that's the atmosphere. Here's some do's and don'ts. Here's some do's and don'ts. So what they like to do, it's almost like the military is sort of set up this way. So like if you're the captain in the field, you're getting some reports from your field guys. You're going to want to know a couple details about what's going on, and then we can attack Hill B from the south, or we can do this, or we can do this. You're going to want to know enough. You want a situation representation. You want to have some options outlined of what you can do, and then you pick one and you move forward. That's the best way to deal with the driver. Everybody get that?
Mhm.
You're not just like, hell, I don't know what we want to do. I mean, what feels good to you? Yeah. Take a look at this stuff and you figure it out. That's not it. That's more of an analytical thing. I mean, an analytical will look at the data and the response will come naturally. This is, here's the thing and here are my recommendations. They may disagree with your recommendations, and I think they want to see that. So you want to demonstrate your efficiency. So a nice thing to do when you're working with a driver, if you know you got a driver, you come in there and you say, look, our meeting is going to take 30 minutes. And here's an outline of what we're going to do. Very brief outline. Driver's going to be going, this is my kind of guy right here. My kind of gal. Love it. Okay? Be clear and to the point. A lot of BS with these people. You want to tell them a story about everything you do. You want to tell them a story about it?
No.
No, they don't want to hear that. Is it okay to bond some with the driver? Yes, but once you get down to business, what do? Stick to it. And when business is over, what do?
Say bye.
Get out. Get out. And that's a mistake that you'll see the next category we make all the time. Is we might have had it, and then the fact that we stayed 45 minutes afterwards blew it. Okay? So don't bore them with excessive details. That's for you analyticals. Okay? Driver don't want to hear it. Stories. Now, as much as you want to tell them, maybe don't do it. Don't bring more than 3 or 4 comments. Just enough. And it's not, it may be 3, might be 4, maybe a little bit more. But whatever is necessary, you don't need to bring last year's comps. You don't need to bring the standard deviation graph and all this kind of stuff. Just enough to get the point across. All right? Anything else on here that we need for you drivers? Okay. Anybody ever run into this type of person? All the time. All the time. How many drivers do we have in the group? So 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's interesting how they say that normally it's about 25% of the population will be in each group. Usually though, when we do it, it seems like we have fewer drivers. Maybe it's just real estate because that's the only people that I ever talk to. Okay. Expressive. So what's the expressive animal? Parrot, right? So the expressive is the life of the party. Okay? That's somebody who's gonna use their mouth and ears disproportionately. Okay? Disproportionately. It's like God gave you 1 mouth and 2 ears, use them proportionally. Expressive did not get the message. Okay? Expressive person, dreamer and a visionary. They're always looking out front. I mean, they're not seeing necessarily this. They're seeing what could be, right? So they're always looking out front. How about, anybody ever heard the thing like, squirrel? Right? That's the expressive. The next shiny object, I mean, this could be, man, this is the greatest thing, Kevin. We are getting, whoa, that is cool. Now we're talking, right? So have difficulty focusing on one thing. Great at getting things started, dreaming up plans, getting it going, and then taking it about 80 to 85% of the way, and then finishing, not so good. How many expressives do we have in the group here? Mike, go ahead and raise your hand. So it's only the 3 of us are the only expressives. Did some of you not take the test? How many expressives? Raise your hand, seriously. Okay. Because it should be, everybody should be in one of the groups. Did we get that? Okay. Some of you just don't like raising your hand? All right. So, feelings, gut feelings, really important to these people. Okay? Just that's how they roll. And the end justifies the means. So we don't really need to have all the data and whatever else. As long as we get to where we're going, it really doesn't matter how we got there. So if it feels good and you think we can do it, we can see it, let's go. So we're going to leap before we look, not look before we leap like the analytical. And then storytellers. How many people do you know that just love everything they do? It's got to have a story. That's dead giveaway. You've got an expressive person. What? All right. Everybody get that?
Yeah.
All right. Ever run into any expressives? Greatest people in the world. All right. So expressive people, a dead giveaway right here. The desk, how's it look? Absolute, Mike, can we say shit show on tape? Not sorry about that. I mean, it's a mess. It's a mess. Why? Because you can't focus. You drivers, laser beam focus. We're working on this project. We're doing it. Here it is. The only thing on the desk is relevant to that. That's the way I start out. And that's the way the express person starts out. I'm doing this. That reminds me of this. Oh, and then this. And next thing you know, you got a pile of crap that you're trying to sort through. That's just how you work. So you're multitasking, or you think you're multitasking, and that's just the way it goes. So you can appear to be disorganized. You know, a lot of times expressive people, they want to have the latest and greatest. So you think about like vehicles, okay? Maybe they have more than one. Maybe they have, you know, sometimes like, I'm expressive. I've never really had a fancy watch. Sometimes people think that, you know, expressive people have to have like a Rolex or whatever else. But they're going to have, it's probably not going to be the same thing that everybody else is. Like the latest and greatest kind of stuff and the shiny thing might be more appealing to them. And then when you remember we talked about the amiable person, what kind of pictures did they have? Family and homey kind of stuff, you know, loving kind of thing. What kind of pictures does expressive have? Experiences, but usually what kind of experiences? Like skydiving, you know, action stuff, cool stuff that you want to be able to tell a story about. Yeah, I mean, amiable, it's grandma and grandpa sitting on the couch. Can you come up with a story about that? But, you know, somebody who's skydiving with, you know, a supermodel, there's a story there. Right? So that's what it's all about. So that's the atmosphere. Expressive do's and don'ts. So you go to the expressive. You need it, Marty. You have to have a little extra time for this. Why?
Because it helps words.
You got to have story time.
Yeah.
Focus on the dream and the emotions around you. So for those of you that are analyticals, the dream and all that, and how does that feel to you? Well, not that you really care how things feel, but how does that compute with you? Not so good. So in this situation, this is how these people are driven. You gotta jump on board this, you know, this vision and feel it and see it, because they're into it. You gotta help them by, you know, taking the details, and maybe like the boring stuff tends to get the expressive wants the action stuff, the excitement. And so, you know, if your client is somebody like that, then you're gonna, one of the ways you can reassure them is you're taking all the minutia of the deal, all that, you're taking that off their plate. We're just focusing on getting to Florida, putting that hook, putting those lines in the water, you know, putting on the sunscreen, catching some fish, drinking some beers, umbrella drinks. Isn't that gonna be awesome? It's all we got. It's all you gotta do. You do that, I'll take care of the rest. Expressive person, I'm on board with that. Analytical, I'm jumping overboard. So, how about data? You wanna bring your briefcase and all that? You wanna bring those reams and reams of data to the and how about your story, Todd? Your story about skydiving with supermodels, that's great. But let me tell you, I got one even better for you. You don't want to be one-upping, because they're the epitome of the one-up. Let them, if there's any one-upping, let them one-up you. If you get a chance to say anything during the meeting. All right, so everybody gets this. Everybody got it? Okay. So how many groups do we have? Four. And every one of us is sort of in one, maybe we're a little bit. Does some of you think maybe you have tendencies to be in both?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So here's something interesting. What if you're going on an appointment and you have like a couple? Is the couple, are they always going to be the same personality type? That complicates things a little bit. So we have to sometimes work with two different personality types. And are they always going to be close? Not really. Not really. So that's something you have to be prepared with, and you just have to make sure that you're including each person. And when you're talking to each person, you're trying to be a little bit more versatile and be more like them, and at least understand where they're coming from, and understand where you're coming from. So let's think about the graph. Okay, so think of this as the vertical axis of the graph, and then we have the horizontal. This is driver, right? What's this one? Expressive. What's this one? Analytical and amiable. So the person, so if you're on the same side of the vertical graph, there's some similarities between driver and expressive, and there's some similarities between amiable and analytical, right? And there's also some similarities here and here and here and here. Where are there next to zero similarities? Diagonal. Okay, so remember the story I told you? I'd go to people's houses and it would be like I was speaking Chinese to the people. Guess what group they were in? The worst possible group of anybody to be in, analytical. But for me, if I try to be me, what's the one that's gonna just lose it? They don't get me at all, not at all. And so what's the natural tendency? And it works the same way. So if you're analytical and you come over to the expressive house, what are they thinking of you? Hey.
They're not focused at all.
Yeah. And how about this one? You get it? I mean, can any of you relate to that, where you've dealt with people that are opposite of you and they just try to be themselves and it just doesn't work, right? So what is the natural tendency for people when it's not working out? What do you think the natural tendency is? To become more versatile? Is that natural? What's the natural tendency? Double down on who you are. And how's that going to work? Makes it worse. Because if I'm expressive and I try to become super expressive, you're going to become super hateful of what I'm trying to do if you're analytical. So you have to be really careful with that. Does everybody understand that? That's probably the most important thing to think. So if you, let's just say somebody who is one of our amiable people, raise your hand. So if you're amiable and you're going over to the driver's house, what are some of the natural things that you're gonna, let's say you don't know anything about personality profiling. What are you naturally gonna wanna do when you get there? Bond, right? So you're walking through the house and you're like, oh, I love these drapes. These are nice. These are nice. You know what? This one doesn't have, I'd like to show you some drapes. Maybe I can give you my grandmother's drapes. Okay. What else are you gonna want to do? So you want to bond? What else do you want to do? I want to get to know you. I want to draw out your interests and what you're all about and all that. And so what is the driver thinking at this point?
Move on.
This is not the right person for me. We were just not on the same plane. Okay? So that's the whole idea of versatility. What should you do? So if you're high-end amiable and you're going to a driver's home, and again, you can't ditch everything about you. You're just trying to, if you're way over here on the amiable scale, what do you do to get closer to them? You're never gonna jump and be over here. What do you do to get closer?
We compliment here and there, but then focus on the goal. And I'm saying this as a driver. That's what I would want you to do.
Okay, very good. You're gonna, the amiable person's gonna have to maybe think about, all right, if I know this is a driver, maybe I'll write an outline for our meeting. At least that's a visible, tangible something to show the driver that you're on the same page. And it gives you something to follow so that you don't go back to being so amiable. You can't lose it all, but that might be a good thing. So for me, going this way from expressive to analytical, what I do when I get to an analytical zone now is I'm like, before we get started, I just want to make sure it's okay. I want to take some really copious notes during our meeting because that's just important to me. Right? And usually when I leave it. But is that going to make you more comfortable? Why would it make you more comfortable if you're analytical if I'm taking notes?
Looks like you're paying attention.
Because obviously data is important to me. I love it. I love it. So let's do it the other way. So let's say you are a driver and you're going over here. This is going to be tough for you. So here you are, driver. Are we getting down to business? What are we doing?
Scheduling no more appointments for that day.
What's the hardest thing we're gonna have to do?
Be patient.
Sit there.
Listen.
Pay attention and listen to all this stuff and talk about your feelings, or whatever it might be.
Just explain the entire time.
Now, are there any other areas in real estate where we might not do this very well? Anybody here married? You know, in any kind of relationship, unless you're the same style, and it's often that our partners are not the same personality type that we are. You know, and our siblings might not be, and our parents might not be. Again, you can use this in so many different areas. So the whole key here is to understand where you are. Again, does this test tell us exactly where we are? It tells us where we think we are. What's more important than where we think we are? What other people think, right? And then we're going to have to use some of this knowledge we picked up today to identify where our clients or friends or whatever else are. We're going to have to try to do a best guess to see where they are. So if you think about what you've done up to this point, you just walk in a lot of cases, you just walk in blind and you're just going to be you to the max. And that'll work a lot of times, won't it? However, when it doesn't work, you go down in flames a lot of times. So that's the whole key. So let's try to, we'll just have a couple tests here, and we'll just guess based on these things. Try to tell me what kind of personality type these people are. Let's see if we got this coming up here. All right.
Oh, God.
Who's that? What's that person's name?
Pam Wood.
Some of you don't know Pam. All right, so Pam Wood. Let's think about this. Pam is one of the most to the point, directed. Is that Pam?
No.
Pam always has a pocket calculator and is taking copious notes, spreadsheet oriented. That's nothing. Somebody ever had spreadsheets? Like how many of you people here that are not driver or if you're amiable or expressive, how many of you have ever created a spreadsheet? I mean, spreadsheets may be the dumbest thing for me. But if you're Todd or if you're Suzanne, you can't live without a freaking spreadsheet. I mean, you don't even go to the bathroom without doing some kind of spreadsheet. And that's the lunacy. That's how different people are. And that's why it's funny to laugh about it. You go on a listing appointment and you're not becoming more versatile. It's almost that hilarious how quick you're going to get rocked out of the house. All right, so back to Pam. So what is Pam? Amiable to the max. The nicest, sweetest, most caring person, cares about other people. I don't know anything about Pam because she wants to know everything about me. Right? I don't know where Pam's from. I know she's married to Russ. You know what I'm saying? You talk, how many of you don't know Pam? Am I right here?
Yeah.
I mean, Pam is perfect. All right, let's see who else. See who else. These are totally at random. This is randomly generated. Let's see who else. Oh, look at that. Who's that? Albert Einstein. Right? A lot of people confused Albert Einstein with Mike and I when we were in college. So, Albert Einstein, I don't really know, and I mean, I could be wrong, but based on some of the stuff we know about Albert Einstein, what group is he in?
Analytical.
Analytical, right? Come up with all that stuff. Have that kind of hair. Probably is. All right, let's see. Here's another random photo. Oh! So there's Big Red.
Big Red.
So again, this could be, he could be a lot of different things, but what do you think the point I'm trying to make here with that?
Driver.
So for instance, like if you're,
It's a driver.
we can all, just take the politics aside. So a person like that, you know, when he is in charge of different corporations and doing so many different things, does a guy like that really want to see all of the data? People that have advisors, a lot of times are going to be driver types because they want to know what? Do they want to know? I mean, does he have an idea of what's going on in the different things? More than likely. Okay, he's getting the bullet points, he's getting some suggestions, and then a lot of times maybe he's throwing those suggestions out and doing his own thing. That's his driver. Okay, let's see what else we have here in this totally random thing here. Oh, look at who So who we have here on the left? Sean Priest. Anybody met Sean Priest in here? Raise your hand if you know Sean Priest. And how about on the right? On the right. So a lot of times we teach this class. Now Mike's here, so we have to be very careful. Okay, when Mike is not here, we talk about him a lot, don't we, in this class? Okay, Mike's here, so we need to be very complimentary of our company president. Because he's the president, I said this before, what some people would say Mike is a driver because he can be the president, he dictates things, and we have to do certain things because he's the president. For those of us who know Mike, what kind of personality type would you say Mike has? Why? Mike, tell us why. What have you learned today that would lead us to that? I know you're going to disagree with me because that's just the kind of person you are. What characteristics do we talk about with the expressives that identify you?
Lots of stories.
Lots of stories. I mean, if you meet Mike, you're going to get a story. Is it relevant to the situation? 60% of the time it is. Okay?
For those of you that can keep up.
What else? What else? What else?
Lots of
I think
ideas.
expressives are also the most critical of the other personality types. And maybe that's total insecurity. When you really, because I'm totally expressive too. When you really break this down, there really ain't a whole lot there. It's a lot of smoke and mirrors. But it works, and it's not like one's worse or better. I mean, it can all work. It's just different ways to do it. And we have to understand that. So what else, Mike? What else about you would be expressive?
Well, I would say the messy desk. I think
Okay.
the messy desk.
What would you say about him? What's the number one thing about him?
Dreamer.
Dreamer. Dreamer. Yeah, this guy was just
Life's
giving him a
a
look.
party, dreamer visionary, having difficulty focusing, gut reaction.
Again, not everyone can keep up.
And super father-in-law. Did you write that?
I did have that.
Yeah. So, visionary. So like the whole history, we're getting ready to do a thing about the history of Hometown Realty. We're going to sit, Rodney, Todd, Mike, and I are going to sit down and talk about some of the old days and how this thing came to be. I mean, if you really think, for me, we really shouldn't even be here, right? I mean, it would be hard for somebody to, knowing what we had and where we came from, to see it getting to this, right? Yet I know one person who never had a doubt. And from day one, could see it. Who was that? That's Mike. Yeah, I mean,
So
so
I thought we'd be nationwide, I'd have a jet, but now. It didn't work out.
We ain't done yet. Don't let the analyticals ruin that dream. So I mean, yeah, that's it. So those people just, there have been walls that a lot of people would have been like, well, we can't get through that wall. And he just ran right through it. And then, what is Todd? Analytical. So Todd's left over with the task with like World War II history with General Patton at the helm, and the tanks are rolling forward, and they're going, and he's like, "The hell with it! We're going right to Berlin with this deal." Todd's like, "All right, where are we going to get the gas? We got to feed the people. We don't have any socks or winter clothes." And everyone's like, "Screw that! We're rolling. Let's roll this momentum and stick it right up Hitler's butt." And so, sometimes it takes a partnership, and that's why if you see like in marriages and stuff, a lot of times you'll see people that when they're the same personality type, it can in some ways from the outside even look like a train wreck because they have the same positive characteristics, but some of the deficiencies are glaring because there's just no one to take care of that. So anyway, so that's really it.